Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maura Keefe. I'm one of the scholars in residence here, and it is my privilege to moderate this conversation with these artists whom I'm going to introduce you to. First, Chelsea Hoy, dancer and associate artistic director. On the far end is Francisco Lemus, not just a gorgeous dancer with the company, but also anointed one of 25 to watch by Dance Magazine. And then the reason all of us are here today, Mark Howard, the founder and artistic director of the company. So first off, congrats on 35 years. Some of us on the stage were not born when you had the idea of founding this company, so congratulations. What we're going to talk about is what we just saw this afternoon. It's such a rich feast of dancing and singing and music and rhythm. And I want to start by talking about the newest piece. As we talk, you'll remember what dances we're talking about, because you can't really read along in this feast of music and dance of what we're seeing in the program. So the newest piece on the program is the Sash, co-choreographed. And I want to just talk about, if you could give us a sense of what you were thinking about in deciding to bring the music and the presence of Kevin Sharkey into this. How did the idea start?
First of all, just to pace ourselves, how much time are we going to be up on stage?
15, 20 minutes.
15, 20 minutes. Okay, so
you could tell that story and it would, yeah.
Well, it's a big happy accident. I guess I met Kevin Sharkey 20 years ago at some festival, and he remembers me, but I don't remember. It was with a band that he was in from Northern Ireland, and one of the gentlemen in that band is the filmmaker. So I got to know Paul, and he ended up being our drummer for a long time before Stephen was our drummer, and he's from Northern Ireland, and I got something, well, I'm on Facebook with Kevin Sharkey, and I knew he was part of that band, but he sends me music every once in a while over the years and says, I hope you could choreograph something one day to something like this. And I've never choreographed anything to a pre-existing soundtrack. Strangely, and this is the worst way to do it, but because I never grew up with dance as structure, I just create the music while I'm creating the dance, which is much more difficult. But anyway, it was difficult for me to do this. We decided that we wanted to work with Stephanie Martinez. I think Stephanie really got interested because Fran's like the first Mexican dancer to come out of Mexico to be awarded on the world level and to be an Irish dancer, sorry. Yeah, he's an amazing tap dancer, but and that got a bit of a splash in Chicago, which is a big community of Mexicans in Chicago. And so she's Mexican-American. So that's where it started. And I thought, well, let's collaborate. And the last couple of pieces I've done, I've collaborated with Chelsea Hoy, which has been an absolute delight because I've never collaborated with anybody before until Chelsea and I started working. So how did it go from there? I went home. We decided to do it. I pulled up one of the pieces of music, the first piece I pulled up, liked it, sent it to her and Stephanie. They liked it. I said, all right. And I called up Kevin, I said, tell me about this soundtrack. What is it about? And he literally just spewed out part of what you heard in that film. And then that's where we started. We walked into the studio and just started putting movement on that image.
So the thing that's strikingly different about it on this program is that it really sets us up in a specific historical context and moment and place in the world, which then we bring with us as the dance starts to emerge, even when it moves into the more abstracted parts about it. So maybe you could say something about how you decided to have him be so present as the storyteller and not just his music being present.
We did a piece last year that Mark and I co-choreographed called Taking the Mick, and we call it a companion work to the Sash in the way that it's more theatrical, maybe than the other works that you saw in the rep today. But it also, Taking the Mick, dealt with the Irish in America story. And a lot of our works, all art is inspired by something, but not a lot of our works are inspired necessarily by a specific story or a specific theme. So the year following, we collaborated with Stephanie Martinez to create the Sash, which of course deals with the Irish in Ireland. And so those two works, they wouldn't live in the program together, but they are companion pieces in that way. And Mark created this company 35 years ago as a place to celebrate the traditions of Irish dance and Irish culture, but allow them to live and breathe in an integrity-filled way. And the Sash in this moment in time for the company seemed like a really powerful moment to really truly pay respects to Ireland and the challenges and the oppression and everything that gave birth to this beautiful art form. And it just so happens that, a Pride March was part of Kevin's story. We did not know that Jacob's Pillow was going to give us a call, let alone that we would be here during Pride Week. So that was a happy accident for sure.
Francisco, could you talk a little bit? You have the central duet in this in the Sash, and you've brought in a guest artist to perform in this section, a kind of more contemporary modern dancer. Could you talk about how that happened and what it was like for you to dance with a very different kind of partner?
I can tell you how it happened. Stephanie Martinez's idea to do a duet in the middle of the piece, and I was a little concerned for Fran because that's stepping outside of his comfort zone, but I'm also a huge believer in everybody in their life and in dance stepping outside of our comfort zones because no growth happens unless we do that, right? So that's where it started, and then his brain and Taylor's brain and Stephanie's brain.
Yeah, when they told me about it, I was a little bit nervous, of course. It was basically trying to improvise to movement, which I never do. I always improvise to music, not movement. So it was a different approach, but also something that really made me improve in the ways that I was thinking of rhythms and movement. And also I was just very excited for trying out some contemporary movement, which is definitely challenging for a person that I was never trained in that style. But it was really profound and fun to do. Definitely Taylor is an amazing artist. Mark also helped me shape the duet. And Stephanie Martinez, I think we connect very well. There was something definitely that we wanted to say as Latin people, and I was just very excited to do that work.
Mark, speaking of pushing people out of their perhaps comfort zone, this is me totally from the outside making this assumption, but I'm thinking about Black Rose. This is the piece where percussive experts with their feet all of a sudden have to become a different kind of percussive expert. So they're now having drumsticks and beating on the floor. Could you talk a little bit about how that came about and what it's like, Chelsea, for you to find a different kind of agility?
Well, I'm proudly an ADHD person, so that means that I can have little dollops of ideas floating around, and they can sit there and I can pluck them when I feel like getting into maybe a creative zone. And so it comes from all over the place. One of the things is that we're the most
toured foreign dance company in Japan. So the company's been going to Japan for over 20 years. Mark struggles with how to phrase that.
And dance critics and presenters over there have described Trinity's work as being, something that really, closely aligns with Japanese culture, and that they really revere, experts. So our past history of winning world titles, and there's at any given moment 2 or 3 world champions, and they love that as a culture. But they also enjoy the understated nature of it and the humility of the company, juxtaposed with an extreme force and power. They have a form of dance over there called No, which really celebrates the white space or the silence, and I guess innately a lot of that was already in my choreography, and there's all these reasons why we just connect, I guess, with Japanese audiences. That's one thing. So we are not the type of Americans that go and try to teach the world how to do things. We go and absorb everything and take it home with us and then try to learn from it and immerse ourselves in it and integrate. So, this is a company that lives in the soul of many countries and many people, and is for everybody. This art form of Irish step, we share it with everybody. And so that's why those Latin rhythms are inside there as well, right? So it's one world. So Kevin Sharkey, it was Different Drums of Ireland, this band in Northern Ireland that's now disbanded, but they had this beautiful mission to change the dialogue about what can be done with music in the Troubles in Northern Ireland. So they had these kids. It started with a social worker who was doing boxing and all kinds of activities, and then Kodo Japanese drummers showed up, and everything changed, and the kids loved the percussion. So he married the southern drums with the northern drums, and one of the northern drums being this big lambag that you saw here with King Willie on the side of it, which would I won't go into all the politics of it, but anyway, their mission was unity. So they did world tours of marrying the sort of Catholic and Protestant drums of Ireland together, And so I did a whole tour with those guys. We also, our old agency was IMG Artist Management, and they wanted us to do a tour with Kodo. So I went on tour with Kodo to be around them for like a week, and there was also all these influences that, spit back a different take on our tradition through that. But I gotta say, it's not difficult for these Irish dancers to pound sticks on the ground. I think it probably took 10 minutes because percussion lives inside of their body, and it's not hard for them to do that.
Speaking to the agility, that's what Mark built Trinity for. And so on stage tonight, you saw dancers that have been here for 12 years in this company, evolving from where all of us grew up inside of a competitive cultural form. So we grow up with a lot of rules, a lot of restraints in terms of where to place your feet and your arms and dance in these 2-time signatures. And so Trinity is based in the traditions, but it's all about evolving this form so it can breathe. And so I think every new work we do, there's agility in some way, and we definitely seek out dancers that are already open to it.
Right, because Mark, when you started, dancers weren't necessarily understanding what you were after. But now, after 35 years, people want to come to Trinity because they have this percussive training within a specific kind of structure, and that they know that the choreography is going to push them to do new things.
The way you started that, you made it sound like I know what I was doing. You answer this one.
Yeah, I think it's important to watch Trinity through the lens of Trinity's history. So Mark started his career as a competitive coach. He founded Trinity Academy of Irish Dance, the most well-known Irish dance school in the world, still today. Born out of Chicago, Milwaukee, Madison, they broke all the barriers for the United States in terms of winning world titles. That gained a lot of World Championship team titles, and that gained a lot of media exposure. And in that time, that was the late 80s, a lot of people, you'll see Mark on the Johnny Carson show, and Johnny literally says, "So, what is Irish dancing?" And you would never hear anyone say that today because since then, as a reaction to Mark moving into the performing arts world, in great part due to inspiration from the Chicago dance community, Gail Calver is sitting right there, legend from Hubbard Street.
I
blame Gail Calver. She talked me into that.
So another way that we see on this program, the way that you're encouraging the dancers to expand their repertoire is in the piece that you made with Silva, when you have the dancers singing Communion that opens with the body percussion and the voice. Could you say something about that piece?
I mean, essentially, all the early work was sadly just me figuring out things on my own. And then once you sort of get the hang of it and get sort of bored with the sound of your own voice a little bit, you look for collaborations. You look to grow. So I just wanted to learn the vocabulary, some basic body percussion. So we, as a group studied that, and she was really great. She's a French-Canadian, tours with a band, and, I saw her at a festival or something. And so, and I think people were expecting this loud thing, but again, back to the no dance, everything doesn't have to be that. I mean, for me, I wanted to create a piece with women, that doesn't represent any particular culture, the power of women, how they connect, and it's about connection. It's about, being lost and finding and all kinds of things in my head. But it was simply done just to find another thing to do, and we just don't like to repeat the same dance twice, ever. And that is part of the magic of the company. It's here to create new dances, but we're pretty strict about not repeating ourselves.
Speaking of a relatively new collaboration, the invitation to Michelle Dorrance and Melinda Sullivan, that's the piece that started with the 4 dancers downstage with the very tight, close leg work. And You talk about it as a conversation between tap dance and Irish steps in sort of the company materials. You started as a tap dancer who discovered Irish dance. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about experts in percussive dance, but coming at it from different perspectives, and how that was juicy in the rehearsal space and making the work.
Yeah. Michelle Dorrance, many of you probably know through Jacob's Pillow and beyond, is a dear friend of ours, and she actually knew of Trinity Irish Dance Company in the early 90s. Her girlfriend at the time was an Irish dancer and desperately wanted to be in the company, and she told Michelle there's one place that celebrates this form artistically. So that's where our journey with Michelle Dorrance starts. Flash forward to 2019, when she came to collaborate with Melinda Sullivan. But it really was started with Mark's request, don't create a tap dance piece and don't create an Irish dance piece. Find something that lives in between. Find something that will be difficult for our company to learn, which it was. It's a completely different sense of weight. And find something that a tap dancer physically can't execute, because there's so many Irish techniques that aren't even actually possible with a tap shoe and with the training. So that's kind of where that journey started. Fran actually wasn't in the room for that creation, but we're in the middle of a new piece with Michelle right now, so Fran has a lot to say about her.
So maybe just say how you're drawing on those two things in performing the work, or even like what it's like to bring your tap dance in your own body in conversation.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a very difficult piece to learn and to perform. Till this day, it's very difficult to do because, as Chelsea said, it's not entirely tap or Irish. And through my career, I tried to combine both, but it's not the same thing. And I think the difficulty of it comes from the tap dancing perspective of Michelle, which is music in dance. And we do something completely different. So the understanding of this is complex, and it was difficult for everybody, but it's also very enjoyable to do. And I feel like when people see it, you can see that there's certain difficulty into it, and I really enjoy it. Michelle is a genius, as we all know, and I'm just very happy that we get to perform her piece.
Thanks for setting me up for my final question, which is about the musicians. And Mark, could you talk a little bit about what kind of music?
I don't like them.
Yeah, I can tell. I'm thinking about that it's a particular personality of a musician, not just brilliant musician, that is part of Trinity. Like you couldn't do it with just any very fine fiddle player over there from Tanglewood coming here. That there has to be a different kind of relationship, not just to what it's like to be a performer, but also because working with 21 other expert musicians in the dancers. Could you talk a little bit about how you find the musicians and how you encourage them to expand their own repertoire within what you do?
Well, first of all, credit goes to our percussionist, Stephen Rutledge, because there are 22 drummers on the stage, and he's got to find his way through 21 other drummers and hold space for them and honor them, but also, the musicians are no different than the entire company. We're always, Chelsea and I, looking for highly intelligent people because we believe that a cerebral jump has to happen to find people that are kind and have reason and understand how to treat each other, and then the rest of it takes care of itself, not only on stage but in outreach programming and the rest. So, and then you always ask, why would somebody in the audience care about this person or the way they move or the way they, and then we care about how they are on a tour bus or what they bring to the table, whether they're funny or they're whatever it is, So a mixed bag of nuts is what's interesting to me. I mean, diversity is the only thing that's interesting to me. Sameness is literally the equivalent of boring in my brain. So I enjoy all of that. So Brendan O'Shea is the nucleus of it. I've known him now, well, I've known him longer, but he's been with the company for 25 years, and he's sort of the shaman priest, of the thing. And his taste level is impeccable. And even though he's not a choreographer, I could have a room of choreographers, and when I'm trying to make a final decision, I'll look over at Brendan, and if he looks at me a different way, I'll think, we're ready. And then Jake is just simply going to be one day, he's a prodigy. He's insane talent, is the best Irish fiddle player. There's a lot of best Irish fiddle players in the world, but I think the actual one is sitting over there. He's only 20-something years old right now. And then we have my nephew-in-law, who my niece walked up to me one day and said, my fiance, I think, loves this even more than you do. And I was like, okay. He's a big fan of it. And I'm like, a rock guitarist, I could use that. So there is an edge to Trinity Irish Dance Company. There always has been. What did that one publicist put it as? It's everything you'd expect, but like nothing you'd imagine. So they're kind of badasses, in their industry. And so he brings the badass, with the electric guitar. They're amazing guys, all of them. They love each other, and they're. And we'll be moving on to new musicians now that it's the 35th anniversary. We have to do something fresh. And they're hearing that for the first time now.
Oh, great. Okay, really, my last question. Chelsea, have you ever counted how many times you jump in a 2-hour show?
I actually love to stay on the ground, so I don't jump that much. But this one over here jumps a lot. No, we haven't, but it is incredibly athletic and aerobic. And
which is why we're delighted. There's another show tonight, 2 tomorrow, and 1 more on Sunday. Tell your friends. Thank you so much for bringing your work here.
Thank you so much.